And now we return to local news with Elizabeth.
Residents living on the Alma estate in Ponders End are concerned that their homes will be downsized if the tower blocks are bulldozed as expected this summer. Enfield Council is proposing a £100 million regeneration scheme around the estate, and it could start as soon as next month. The proposals, which are being finalised, will be put to Cabinet members in July. They include plans to build 1,000 new homes, including 400 council homes. The 1,800 tenants currently living in the 717 flats on the estate will need to be moved temporarily until the new homes are built. Nigel Hassan, Vice Chairman of the Alma Residents Association, wants the new homes to be the same size as the existing flats. He said, "We want like for like, but the council hasn't guaranteed that. We need to know where we'll be moving to before we say we agree with the plans." However, council consultations with residents revealed that 78% of them were happy with the regeneration plans, and Mr. Hassan admitted that the scheme was long overdue. "We're living in the worst part of Enfield," he told the advertiser. "There's mould on the walls, the heating is packing up, and there are drafts coming in. It's a nightmare. We're happy in that place. I beg your pardon. We're happy that that place is being rebuilt, but we want it to be treated like human beings." Enfield's Cabinet Member for Housing, Ahmed Okaner, said the plans for relocating residents were a work in progress, and he couldn't say how long residents would be housed in temporary accommodation. "Once we get the approval of Cabinet in July, we can start working on the rehousing options," he said. "The scheme will be part of the wider plans to regenerate Ponders End. We will also bring new jobs to the area, with apprenticeships being offered as part of the construction of the new homes."
A man arrested in connection with the death of cyclist Frank Mugisha has had his bail extended for a second time. The 62-year-old was initially arrested on suspicion of dangerous driving at the scene of the collision, which took place in Great Cambridge Road near the junction with White Hart Lane on March the 27th. He was bailed until April the 25th, and his bail was then extended until June the 7th because police needed more time to investigate the fatal accident. That came after the inquest into Mr. Mugisha's death, which was due to open on April the 19th, was postponed for the same reason. The arrested man has now had his bail extended for the second time and is now due to return to a North London police station on July the 23rd. Mr. Mugisha, 41, of Hoe Lane, Enfield, died as the result of his injuries on April the 2nd at the Royal London Hospital in Whitechapel, East London. The father of four, a sports coach who was married and originally from Uganda in East Africa, was the fifth cyclist to be killed on London's roads since the start of the year. His death has prompted renewed calls from numerous parties for enhanced safety measures for cyclists in the capital.
The Principal Theatre Company will be staging new open-air productions of two of Shakespeare's best-loved plays, just as long as the weather holds out. Starting from next Thursday, A Midsummer Night's Dream and Julius Caesar will be performed at Capel Manor in Bullsmore Lane, Enfield, and the Old Ashmoleans Rugby Club in the Bourne Southgate, before finishing the run in Coram's Fields in Guildford Street, Bloomsbury, central London. The open-air venues are the perfect place to enjoy some of the bard's finest work, along with a picnic and a glass of wine. Principal's artistic director, Paul Gladwell, told the advertiser, "We really do aim our plays at everyone, children as young as 3 or 4 years old. A Midsummer Night's Dream is set to the music of the Beatles, and Julius Caesar is given a modern twist. For the first half they will be wearing suits, and then the actors will be dressed in army uniforms. The difficult thing for the actors being outside is having to compete with the unexpected noises you get outside, but we are very lucky with our venues. Capel Manor is beautiful to look at, and it is a wonderful backdrop for the plays. The actors really work with the space, coming from behind trees and things. We've been doing this for 12 years, and we always get great reviews. Last year, Time Out said that our production of A Tempest was London's second best show of the year." According to Paul, the plays will only be called off if it is raining heavily, and audience members will be invited to another show. Performance at Capel Manor take place from the 21st of June to June the 30th. At Ashmolean's Rugby Club from July the 10th to July the 14th. And at Coram's Fields from July the 19th to August the 4th. Tickets cost £11 to £15.50. And you can visit www.millfieldartscentre, all one word, .co.uk for full listings.
This is a sporting article. Cricket. Winchmore Hill maintained their excellent run of form on Saturday by claiming a 27-run win at Brondesbury, which keeps them just 4 points off the top of Division 1 of the Middlesex County Cricket League. Heading into the match on a high following 3 successive victories, Hill lost a seemingly crucial toss and were inserted in what looked to be ideal bowling conditions. But Scott Newman and David Allen made light of this with a spectacular opening stand, which saw Newman smash 80 off just 46 balls and Allen hit 78 off 73 deliveries. Hill were, however, unable to take full advantage of their stunning start and were eventually dismissed for 237. But this still proved too much for the struggling hosts, as they were bowled out for 210, despite some fine late resistance from Ali Raza. I was obviously disappointed to lose the toss with the wicket so wet, said skipper Adam Holworth, who played a key role in the win by claiming figures of 5 for 73. Scott made a conscious decision to go after every delivery as if it were a 20-20 match, and it paid off. However, Southgate were let down by their batting as they slumped to a 7-wicket defeat at home to Division 1 leaders Teddington, which leaves them still searching for their first points of the season.
The highlight of the Diamond Jubilee weekend for one Palmer's Green schoolgirl was not the flotilla, the concert, or even the flypast. For Ajuke Bandeli, it was meeting the Queen and congratulating her personally on her 60-year reign. The 9-year-old presented a posy to Her Majesty at the Commonwealth Heads of Government lunch hosted by Commonwealth Secretary-General Kamalesh Sharmat at Marlborough House, central London, last Wednesday. She was chosen after her mum, Yinka Bandele, who is the programme officer at the Commonwealth Secretariat, entered her daughter's name into a drawer to present the Queen with flowers as she arrived. According to her mum, Ajuke, a pupil at Hazelwood Junior School in Hazelwood Lane, Palmer's Green, was stunned when she heard that she had been chosen.
Did you know that there are 515 people registered blind and 415 people registered partially sighted in the London Borough of Enfield? According to data from the Enfield Observatory, Enfield has the second lowest number of people registered blind per head of population of any London borough. At below 0.20%, only the City of London has a lower number on its register. And 56% of people registered blind in Enfield are over 75 years old, although that is less still than the London average.
This is Andy Lutt's column. Perhaps the Queen should have jubilees more often. The 60th anniversary of Her Majesty's reign certainly brought out the best in Enfield, with a record number of street parties across the borough. I managed to get along to a few of the celebrations over the bank holiday weekend, and I have to say that residents had really pulled out all the stops. One gathering in particular, held in Sutherland Road, Edmonton, was everything that a street party should be. Neighbours, young and old, were out in force, and everyone had contributed things to eat and drink, including fantastic Jubilee-inspired cake. It was on the Sunday, and it absolutely bucketed down, but even the rain couldn't dampen people's spirits. And that's the thing. In spite of the weather and in spite of the tough economic times that many are facing, the sense of community in Enfield remains strong, and that shone through in the street parties. I was recently introduced to and joined an Enfield Facebook site called Love Your Doorstep. The idea behind it is simple, namely bringing residents together and sharing recommendations for businesses and resources in the area, and it's proving to be very effective. On Tuesday of last week at another street party, I met some Love Your Doorsteppers, and that sense of community was once again very much alive. It's easy to feel unconnected in such a large city as London, and it's often remarked that in recent years, with the advent of the internet and with people's lives becoming increasingly hectic, our community feeling has been lost. But I'd say that the Jubilee weekend proved resolutely otherwise. Our neighbourhoods are very much connected and our sense of community is active. So here's to an Olympic summer and beyond.
A rare and beautiful shrub has bloomed at Middleton House Gardens. The tree peony plant, formerly known as a Peony rockii, has been recognised as an endangered species since 1985, and there is a 3-year waiting list to buy one. Middleton House's peony was bought by senior gardener Brian Hewitt for £15 through a national newspaper offer 3 years ago. He told the advertiser that when the specimen arrived from China, it was barely alive. Now, however, it has sprouted 2 flowers, which have survived roughly 2 weeks. Brian described the bloom as brief but glorious. Native to the mountains of midwestern China, the plant is suited to cold temperatures and hot summers. It's part of the clematis and buttercup families and is often used as a herbal remedy in Chinese medicine. Mr. Hewitt, who had wanted a tree peony for more than 30 years, said, "This is the first specimen of the tree peony to be grown at Middleton House Gardens, and the gardening team were extremely excited to glimpse its first 2 flowers in bloom." Social entrepreneur Tim Smith, co-founder of the Eden Project in Cornwall, opened a Victorian-style glasshouse at the gardens in Bulls Cross, Enfield last month. The 8-acre gardens have been restored in the ethos of former resident Edward August Bowles, the self-taught gardener, botanist and enthusiast of unusual and exotic plants. Considering the peony's legendary status, Mr. Hewitt added, "Mr. Bowles would have certainly had one if he'd heard of it."
Police cadets from Enfield played a pivotal role in the Jubilee celebrations, leading the public down the Mall before the royal family came out onto the Buckingham Palace balcony to wave to the crowds. Millions of TV viewers watched on Tuesday last week as the 30-strong contingent of Enfield volunteer police cadets began by lining the route the Queen took during the horse-drawn carriage procession through London. Afterwards, the cadets, along with Girl Guides, Scouts, and members of a Boys and Girls Brigade, led the crowds down the Mall and to the gates of Buckingham Palace before the Queen, the Prince of Wales, the Duchess of Cornwall, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry came out to wave. Following the Queen's appearance, the cadets who were aged between 14 and 18 were allowed into the grounds of Buckingham Palace. Louise Scorer, one of the cadets, said, "It was an unforgettable experience and a great privilege to be there." The cadets were also on duty at the Jubilee concert the previous evening, helping with the search arches for guests going into the palace and lining the route for the royal family to get into the royal box. The teenagers met many of the performers, including Jessie J, Ed Sheeran and JLS.
This is a little article about Oakwood. Occupying the ridge between the Barnet and Lee valleys, Oakwood has managed to retain a quiet, almost rural atmosphere, despite being sandwiched between both Enfield Town and Southgate. In fact, its proximity to these 2 bustling areas makes Oakwood a popular place to live, particularly for families attracted by plenty of green spaces and the excellent transport links into central London. The area is largely residential with many wide tree-lined roads filled with 1930s family homes and a few newer developments of modern flats and apartments. But for people passing through, perhaps the most recognisable part of Oakwood is its imposing underground station. Originally called Enfield West, Oakwood Station opened in 1933 and was designed by Charles Holden, the architect responsible for many of the striking underground stations around the capital. Near Oakwood is the Grade 2 listed mansion house that is now Trent Park campus of Middlesex University, though actually I think it's just moving from there. But obviously the building is still there, and it once belonged to the wealthy Sassoon family. During this time, the mansion often played host to film stars and dignitaries such as Charlie Chaplin and Sir Winston Churchill. And then, during the Second World War, it was used as a rather grand prisoner of war camp for high-ranking German officers and generals. Today, the majority of the 800-acre park is open to the public, with woodland walks, wildlife, ornamental ponds and a picnic area. The park is also the home to a large golf course, sports centre and award-winning equestrian centre.
Here's an article by David Pam that you may have heard of. In early surveys of Enfield, the road we now know as Silver Street was called Parsonage Street. The parsonage, a manor house of considerable size, more usually known as the Rectory, stood on the corner of Parsonage Lane and Baker Street. The site is now occupied, to add further to the confusion, by an estate built in the 1930s and named Monastery Gardens by the builder. Up to about 1937, Parsonage Lane ended in a T-junction with Baker Street. A blank wall flanked the field opposite, and the land behind it was being bought up rapidly for house building. Prices had risen to nearly £2,000 an acre. Traffic, too, was increasing. The route from the Great North Road to the London docks brought heavy lorries down the Ridgeway and through the town, causing so much congestion that the council sought to create a bypass. It was necessary to acquire the land before it was all covered with houses. A compulsory purchase was therefore made of 12 acres from the trustees of Sir Alfred Somerset, the late owner who had lived at Enfield Court, now part of the grammar school. The plan was to divert traffic from the Ridgeway, away from Church Street in the town, by Holtwhite's Hill and Parsonage Lane to the old T-junction, from where a broad highway was to be constructed, crossing Churchbury Lane into Southbury Road. At that time, Churchbury Lane was known as Cherry Orchard Lane. In earlier years, it had been called Back Lane. There were back lanes in many towns which were lesser roads running parallel to more important highways, in this case to Baker Street. The one in Edmonton was renamed Victoria Road. It ran parallel to 4th Street and followed the lines of Park Avenue, Park Road, Victoria Road, Cedars Road and Little Cedars. Even before Churchbury Lane had been called Back Lane, it was known as Churchbury Field Lane, and was the way into Churchbury Field, where the peasants of Enfield had their strips of arable and their rights at common. But the name Cherry Orchard Lane had fitted best the beauty of its orchards in the early years of the last century, being both descriptive and evocative. Loveliest of trees the cherry is now, is hung with bloom along the bough. The land at the southern end of the lane had long been farmed by the Ironside family, whose farmhouse stood on the site now occupied by Churchbury Close. It was quickly demolished after the developers moved in, and a transformation of the area ensued. The hedgerows were grubbed up, the orchards divided into building plots, and houses for owner-occupiers soon appeared. It's amazing how rapidly building was done in the 1930s. Pleasant, well-designed dwellings with good gardens. Further north, an auctioneer had the former Cracknell's farm for sale, with its old timber farmhouse near Carlton House, which stood on a further 8 acres of the Somerset estates. The council purchased the latter for a new school and playing field. With all this new housing, there would inevitably there would inevitably be many children to educate. Throughout the years of its glory in the Athenian League, Enfield Football Club had played its matches on a nice little ground on one of the Vicar's Fields in Cherry Orchard Lane. And their first season there was 1893 to 94, when they were in the North Middlesex League.
Two-time winners Munster look set to provide Saracens' main opposition in the pool stages of next season's Heineken Cup. The draw for European Rugby's Premier Cup club competition took place in Dublin yesterday morning. I'm not sure what day this was. And Sarries, who found themselves in the third tier of seeds, ended up in Pool 1 alongside Edinburgh and French outfit Racing Metro, in addition to the Irish Giants. Saracens, the only English team to reach the quarter-finals last season, suffered an agonising defeat against Munster in the semi-finals of the Heineken Cup back in 2008, while they were in the same pool as Racing 2 years ago, losing at home but claiming a notable victory in Paris. Mark McCall's men have never played Edinburgh, who became the first Scottish side ever to reach the semi-finals of the competition this year in a competitive match. Meanwhile, Sarries have bolstered their squad by signing South African flanker Nick Fenton-Wells from the Stormers and young Italian prop Lorenzo Romano from Aironi. "We have been following Nick's progress for some time," said Director of Rugby McCall. "He has the heart of a lion, and we are delighted he has decided to join us." And Lorenzo made an impact for Aironi last season, and he was recently included in the Italian squad. He is a young prop with immense potential, and we are looking forward to providing an environment where he can develop into one of the leading tight-head prop forwards in Europe.
Muriel Arthur, who, as many listeners know, is instrumental in getting your tape to you, has asked that we remind everybody of the dangers of allowing strangers access to your homes. It seems that almost every week we learn of con artists who bluff their way into people's houses and make away with money or valuables. The utility companies, gas, electricity, phone, water companies, will never just knock on a door, day or night, and seek to gain entry. They will have arranged a prior appointment with the householder. So if someone knocks on your door and says that they're doing an inspection of your gas pipes, phone line or anything else, or says that they've been advised of a leak of gas or water in the neighbourhood and want to inspect your systems, don't let them in. Even if they're in uniform or show what appears to be company identification, don't let them in. Keep the chain on your door, or, preferably, speak to them without opening the front door, perhaps by speaking to them from a side or upstairs window. Tell them that you'll be phoning their office to check up first. Tell them that you're phoning neighbours and asking them to pop round and check their identity properly. If they are actually representatives of the company, they'll be pleased to wait. If not, they'll scamper off to try their luck at some other door where the householder isn't as bright as you are. Unfortunately, we have to treat every stranger knocking on our door with caution. You may have heard that even a government minister was caught out. 2 smartly dressed men knocked on his door early one morning and said that their car had broken down and asked to use his phone. It was only after they left he noticed that his wallet was missing. It is really very unlikely to happen to you, any of this, but it could, so it's better to be safe than sorry.
You remember I was just talking about David Pam's article, and where he mentioned that the Enfield Football Club had played its matches on one of the Vicar's Fields in Cherry Orchard Lane, and their first season was in 1893. Well, here's an item about the same club. New Enfield 1893 manager Gordon Boateng is confident that the club has the potential to be a big success on and off the field. The former Brimstown Rovers and Cheshunt boss, who has also had spells much higher up the non-league pyramid at Harlow Town, Bishop Stortford and Histon, has taken charge at Goldstown Road following Kevin Lucas's decision to quit and become manager at Ilford. and Boateng is looking forward to the challenge of trying to finally get the E's promotion from the Essex Senior League. We have to build a new team and start from scratch, but I'm very confident that we can build the club on and off the field, he said. Most of my experience has been at a higher level, but I've been at step 5 before, and I know what to expect. This is a very difficult league to get out of, but we're putting a plan in place to help us achieve that. I think that stability is the key. I want to work with the youth team so we've got that natural progression in place, and we all want to build up the club's role in the community and help raise its profile. It's very much a long-term plan that we're putting in place. I'm not interested in a quick fix. Enfield 1893 have confirmed 6 pre-season friendlies to help them prepare for the new Essex Senior League season, starting with a trip to Colney Heath on July the 10th at 7:30 p.m. They also visit Hertford Town on July the 17th, while the E's have home games against Hatfield Town on July the 14th, that's at 1 p.m, Hemel Hempstead Town on July the 21st at 7:45 p.m, Aveley on July the 24th at 7:45 p.m, and St Albans City on July the 28th at 3 p.m.
We've reached the end of our programme for this week. Thank you for listening. So from the team of Elizabeth, Malcolm, myself and Dave on the controls, it's
Goodbye.
Please remember to turn over the address label in your postal packet, put the cassette into the packet and return it to us as soon as possible, in readiness for the next edition. Don't forget you can call Diane de Jersey regarding any help you may require in connection with Enfield Talking Newspaper. And the Enfield Talking Newspaper will be with you again in 1 week's time.